In the golden cradle of the African savanna, where the wind hums lullabies through the tall grass and the sun paints the earth in amber, life moves to an ancient rhythm. Here, among the acacia trees and the dust-kissed plains, a zebra named Kifaru was born. Kifaru's world was one of movement and music, the thunder of hooves, the rustle of leaves, the distant roar of lions, and the soft murmurs of his herd. He was born beneath a crescent moon, his mother's breath warm against his striped flank, her eyes full of instinct and love. From his first trembling steps, he learned the language of survival: stay close, stay alert, run when the wind changes. Zebras, unlike their equine cousins, are not built for solitude. They are woven into the fabric of their herd, each stripe a thread in a living tapestry. Kifaru's stripes were bold and jagged, like lightning bolts across his body, a pattern as unique as a fingerprint, as if nature had signed him with flair. He grew strong, swift, and curious. He chased butterflies through the grass and nuzzled his younger sister when she was born. He learned the scent of rain before it fell, the warning in a lion's cough, the joy of galloping through shallow rivers. Life was not easy, but it was beautiful. Until the fence. The fence was not part of the savanna's rhythm. It was a foreign thing, sharp, rusted, and humming with menace. It had been erected by humans to mark the edge of a private game reserve, a boundary invisible to the animals until it bit them. Kifaru had never seen it before. The herd had wandered farther than usual, drawn by the promise of greener grass after a rare rain. The air was thick with the scent of wet earth and wildflowers. Kifaru, now a young stallion, was leading a small group of yearlings, his hooves light, his spirit high. He didn't see the wire until it was too late. There was a snap, not of twigs, but of flesh. A scream tore from his throat as the barbs sank into his leg, slicing through skin and muscle. He thrashed, panicked, and the wire only bit deeper. Blood soaked the dry grass. The other zebras scattered, their eyes wide with fear, their instincts screaming flight. Kifaru was alone. The sun climbed higher, indifferent. Flies gathered. Kifaru lay trembling, his breath shallow, his leg twisted in the cruel embrace of the fence. Every movement sent fire through his body. He tried to stand, but the pain was too much. He whinnied, a sound of desperation that echoed across the plains. Hours passed. The herd did not return. Predators circled in the distance, curious. A hyena laughed. A vulture wheeled overhead. But Kifaru did not give up. He lay still, conserving strength, his ears twitching at every sound. He remembered his mother's voice, the warmth of the herd, the feel of wind in his manner. He wanted to run again. He wanted to live. And somewhere, far away, help was coming. In the heart of the savanna, life and death often dance on the same breeze. But sometimes, the wind carries more than instinct, it carries the scent of change. Miles away, in a small conservation outpost nestled at the edge of the reserve, a group of wildlife researchers were preparing for their daily patrol. Among them was Dr. Amina Ndlovu, a seasoned ecologist with eyes that missed nothing and a heart that beat in rhythm with the wild. She had spent years studying zebra migration patterns, cataloging births, deaths, and movements. That morning, something felt off. The GPS collars on several zebras had shown erratic movement the night before, a sudden scatter, followed by silence from one of the younger males. Kifaru. She remembered him well. He had been collared as a foal, his bold stripes and spirited nature making him a favorite among the team. When his signal stopped moving, Amina's instincts flared. "Let's check the northern boundary," she told her team. "Something's wrong." The sun was beginning to dip when they found him. Kifaru lay motionless, his body caked in dust and blood, his breathing shallow. The barbed wire had torn deep into his leg, and infection was setting in. His eyes fluttered open as the humans approached, wide with fear. But Amina moved slowly, speaking in soft tones, her hands raised in peace. The team worked quickly, tranquilizer first, then bolt cutters. The wire resisted, snarling like a beast, but they were patient and precise. As the final strand snapped, Kifaru's body sagged in relief. They loaded him onto a stretcher, wrapping his leg and monitoring his vitals. He was rushed to the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center, where veterinarians worked through the night to clean the wound, administer antibiotics, and stabilize his condition. 4 days, He hovered between worlds, the wild and the unknown, pain and healing, fear and trust. In the quiet hours of dawn, when the world holds its breath, healing begins. Kifaru awoke in a pen surrounded by soft hay and the scent of eucalyptus. His leg was bandaged, his body weak, but he was alive. Amina visited daily, speaking to him gently, offering apples and reassurance. Slowly, he began to eat. Then to stand. Then to limp. The other zebras in the rehab center watched him with curiosity. One young mare, recently orphaned, began to linger near his pen. Her presence seemed to soothe him. Weeks passed. The wound closed. The limp faded. The fire in his eyes returned. And one morning, as the sun rose over the savannah, the gates opened. Kifaru stepped out, the young mare at his side, and together they trotted into the wild, back into the rhythm of the plains, where the wind still sang and the grass still danced. But now, a scar on his leg told a different story, not of defeat, but of survival. In the wild, memory is not a luxury, it is a compass. And for Kifaru, the plains were full of echoes. The savannah welcomed him back with open arms. The wind carried familiar scents of dust, dung, and distant rains. The acacia trees still whispered their secrets, and the sun still painted the earth in gold. But Kifaru was not the same. He moved with a slight limp, a reminder of the wire's cruel embrace. Yet his eyes were sharper now, his instincts honed by pain and survival. The young mare, whom the rangers had named Lela, stayed close. She had lost her mother to a lioness weeks before her rescue. In Kifaru, she found a protector. In her, he found a reason to lead again. Together, they searched for the herd. It took days. The plains were vast, and the zebra clans had scattered with the rains. But one morning, as the mist lifted from the grasslands, Kifaru saw them, a familiar pattern of stripes, a chorus of snorts and brays. His mother was there, older now, her muzzle graying. She froze when she saw him, then galloped forward, her call rising like a song. The reunion was not dramatic. Zebras do not weep or embrace. But in the way they stood together, flank to flank, breathing the same air, there was something sacred. Kifaru was home. Back at the conservation center, Amina watched the GPS signal move again, steady, strong, purposeful. She smiled. Kifaru's rescue had sparked something larger. The footage captured by her team of the barbed wire, the wound, the rescue, the release had gone viral. Donations poured in. Volunteers arrived from across the globe. The reserve received funding to remove the old fencing and replace it with wildlife-friendly barriers. More importantly, the story ignited conversations. Local communities, once wary of conservation efforts, began to see the value in protecting wildlife corridors. Schools invited Amina to speak. Children painted murals of zebras and lions, of rangers and veterinarians. The government took notice, pledging to expand protected areas and enforce anti-poaching laws. Kifaru had become a symbol not just of survival, but of coexistence. Some stories are not just told, they are carried in the wind, etched in the earth, and remembered in the rhythm of hooves. Years passed. Kifaru grew into a dominant stallion, his herd thriving under his watch. Lela bore him foals striped and spirited, with eyes full of wonder. He taught them to run, to listen, to respect the wind. And though he never strayed near fences again, he bore his scar with pride. Amina continued her work, often spotting Kifaru from afar during aerial surveys. She would smile, whispering, "Still running, old friend." And somewhere in the tall grass, a young zebra would ask, "Who is that?" And an elder would reply, "That is Kifaru, the one who came back." Every life in the wild is a thread in a greater tapestry, one that stretches across continents, across species, across time. Kifaru's story did not end with his return. It rippled outward into classrooms, into policy meetings, into the hearts of people who had never set foot on African soil. His scar became a symbol not of weakness, but of resilience. His survival reminded the world that every animal has a story, and every story matters. The barbed wire that once trapped him was melted down and reforged into a sculpture, a zebra mid-gallop, its manner wild, its eyes fierce. It stood at the entrance of the reserve, a sentinel of memory and hope. Beneath it, a plaque read, Let no boundary sever the rhythm of the wild. Seasons turned. The savanna shifted from green to gold to dust and back again. Kifaru aged gracefully, his manner graying, his pace slowing. But his legacy grew. His foals became leaders. Lela remained his companion, her eyes always scanning the horizon. The herd flourished, navigating droughts and floods, predators and peace. And always, they avoided the fences. Amina, too, changed. She became a voice for the voiceless, speaking at international summits.
These zebras with their iconic stripes are a perfect example of how adaptation leads to survival in the wild.
Where these incredible zebras roam freely, watch how they interact with their environment, showcasing their detective behavior.
Advising governments, mentoring young conservationists. But she never lost her field instincts. Every few months, she would return to the plains, binoculars in hand, searching for a familiar pattern of stripes. And sometimes, just sometimes, she would spot him standing tall on a ridge, the wind in his manner, the sun catching the scar on his leg. In the end, all creatures return to the earth. But some leave behind more than footprints, they leave echoes. Kifaru's final days were quiet. He wandered a little farther from the herd, as old stallions do. He stood beneath the stars, listening to the night. He drank from the river he once limped beside. And one morning, as the sun rose in a blaze of fire and gold, he lay down in the grass and did not rise again. The herd gathered around him. They did not mourn as humans do. But they lingered. They touched noses. They remembered. Amina found him days later, guided by the stillness in the GPS signal. She knelt beside him, her hand resting on his flank, tears tracing the lines of her face. "Thank you," she whispered, "for surviving. For teaching us. For running." This is not just the story of a zebra. It is the story of a world in balance, fragile, fierce, and full of grace. Kifaru's tale became a children's book, a documentary, a conservation campaign. His name was spoken in languages he never heard, his image painted on walls from Nairobi to New York. But most importantly, his story changed minds. Fences were redesigned. Wildlife corridors were expanded. Communities were empowered to protect the animals they once feared. And somewhere, in the tall grass of the savannah, a young zebra gallops free, fearless, and striped with the legacy of one who came before. Because in the wild, nothing is forgotten. Not the pain, not the rescue, not the run, the end.
These zebras with their iconic stripes are a perfect example of how adaptation leads to survival in the wild.